Well, welcome to another Friday night. Last week I started talking about the challenges for people in recovery is that there's a whole bunch of really good tools out there to help people with recovery now that I think are so important and so necessary. But what I want to add to this discussion is people in recovery need more than just tools. They also need some key underlying attitudes. And if they don't have these attitudes, they're not going to make it in recovery. And last time we looked at, you just need a commitment that you are going to stick at this regardless of the hard days, regardless of the boring days. You are committed. You're in your cortex brain, not in your limbic brain. Today, I want to look at, if you're going to make it in recovery, you need the attitude of courage. And what I have found over the years is that courage is, in our culture today, an often misunderstood word. People often think that if they have courage, they don't feel any fear. So I want to really dig into this and explain it. But I want to begin by saying that most people from complex trauma struggle with courage. And I'm going to explain that as well. But healing from complex trauma requires immense courage. It, to me, is one of the foundational building blocks of a healthy recovery. Once a person begins to understand courage and implement courage, it helps them reclaim their power. It creates resilience. It helps them to grow. It is such an important thing. So before we get into the definition, just let me have you think with me about this. So let's say that you're, for the very first time, looking at entering into recovery for your trauma. You realize you have trauma. You realize it's all the ways you adapted as a child are messing up your adult life, that you need help. So admitting to yourself and then to others, that takes courage, because they might judge you. They might look down on you. They might see you as a problem. Then going and asking for help, that takes courage. And then committing to a program that could be 2 months, 6 months, going there every day, that takes courage. Then that new program is going to ask you to implement new practices and new tools. And that's going to take tremendous courage. And then that program is going to ask you to look at your deep underlying issues, your trauma, your old coping mechanisms, your family. Is going to ask you to deconstruct your entire life. That is super scary, and it takes courage to do that. And then it's going to ask you to build a healthy support system, a surrogate family with safe people that you can connect with. That takes courage. And then it's going to get you to learn healthy tools, which means learning new ways of handling situations. It means entering into the unknown by trying new things where you might fail, it might not work, you might get hurt. That takes courage. And then as you start on this road to recovery, you're going to face many challenges and obstacles and opposition. And you got to go through every one of them. And that takes courage. And then you're going to have your own internal fears get triggered every time you take a new step of growth. And that's going to take courage. And then all of this is going to require you to be totally honest, to see things accurately, to honestly self-reflect on your life, on your choices, on your ways of coping, on your beliefs, on your values. Do you see how much courage it takes to begin and get going in recovery? Courage is an essential attitude. So let me define and then explain courage. So the definition of courage is not the absence of fear. It is doing the right thing in the midst of fear. So with courage, I feel fear. That's the emotion. But instead of letting it pull me in the old ways of responding to fear, fight, flight, freeze, I now choose to do what is healthy. That's what courage is. It's doing the right thing, even though fear is desperately wanting me to do the old thing. Eddie Rickenbacker said, courage is doing what you're afraid to do. There can be no courage unless you're scared. Now, let me develop this fear piece, because complex trauma people often get this very confused. Fear is actually designed to be a very good emotion. It is designed to protect us when we face danger. So if we're going into a dangerous situation, we should feel fear. It causes us to seek safety, to protect us. Fear's concern is all about keeping us safe. So fear is designed to be a good thing. So when we see danger or we're in danger, we feel fear. That alerts us something's potentially going to hurt us. That then motivates us to take steps to resolve the danger. And then once that situation is resolved, we either fight, flight, or we go in and fix the problem. Then the fear disappears and we're back to peace. We're back to feeling content. So fear is to be this passing emotion that is resolvable as we take steps to fix the problem, and then the fear is gone. That is what fear's design is. But let's go to complex trauma. The child is in danger. The child feels fear. The child takes steps to resolve the fear, but it doesn't get resolved. It only leads to pain. And so after a while, the child goes, if I feel fear, don't try to fix it, don't try to resolve it. The only solution is to go the other direction, fight, flight, or fear. So the problem with complex trauma is that it keeps a child living in unresolvable fear. There's just no way to the child to resolve it other than fight, flight, or fear, or freeze. And so fear becomes a controlling emotion as a result of complex trauma. Fear is no longer a good thing. Fear is now a bad thing because it now pulls me to maladaptive ways of coping that eventually, they might keep me safe in the moment, but eventually they hurt me in adult life. They put me into a prison. Now let me add another piece here. If you look at that child who's facing problems and fear comes in, they're facing danger, fear comes in, what do they need to do to resolve it? They need resources, two types of resources. They need people to support them and help them, and they need tools, skills to be able to handle the situation. So fear is about the lack of resources, not having sufficient support, not having sufficient tools. So courage is when I gain supports, have tools, and now when I face situations that trigger fear, instead of going to fight, flight, freeze, I choose to use my resources. I choose to use the new tools to handle the situation, even though everything in me wants to run away. I choose to rely on safe people when everything in me wants to run away. I choose to courageously deal with the problem instead of avoiding the problem. That was the old solution. That gave temporary relief, but only made things worse in the long run. So I hope you see that the idea behind courage is not that we never feel fear. It's how we respond when we do feel fear. It's doing what we know we should do even when our heart is full of fear. It is making different choices now in the midst of fear. Fear pulls us to those old maladaptive tools, saying that gives short-term relief. That's the path to take. But now we resist that and say, no, I'm not going to give in to the fear. I'm not going to look for a short-term solution. I'm going to walk into that fear and choose the right tools to resolve this problem. So courage is no longer letting fear run my life. To keep running every time we feel fear eventually makes us a prisoner to fear. It's now my master. I do not know how to escape it. I keep letting it control me. Courage is choosing not to let fear be my master. Now, I need to add this. Courage is not something we muster up and say, oh, if I just muster up some courage, then I can overcome the fear. Courage is getting out of my limbic brain to my cortex, regulating my emotions and thinking, what is the healthy solution here? What is the right action here? And then courage is choosing to act in the right way, in a healthy way. It's a conscious decision based on evidence, on new tools, on new truth, not on all the emotions. That's what courage is. So a lot of people want to think of courage as some emotion. Courage is primarily acting on truth, acting on what is healthy. It's action devoid of the emotion. So courage is refusing to let my powerful limbic brain run the show. It is repeatedly letting my cortex be in the driver's seat, following a healthy solution, resisting the pull of the limbic brain to an unhealthy solution. So for people from complex trauma who've been controlled by fear for years, who've given in to fear and developed all these maladaptive ways of coping, and now when fear is triggered, it pulls them powerfully back to those old maladaptive tools, courage is essential. You can't recover without courage because it is living with the fear, sitting in the fear, not giving into the pull, but choosing new tools, relying on new supports. Now, let me add this because I think it's important. When your fear gets triggered today, your fear puts you into your limbic brain. And your limbic brain goes back to when that fear was triggered in the past and to the age you were when that fear was triggered in the past. So you might be 50 years today, but when you are triggered by fear, you go back to maybe feeling like a 5-year-old. And you see the world like a 5-year-old. You believe like that 5-year-old. You think like that 5-year-old. It's all based on limbic brain reasoning, on your past experience as a 5-year-old. It's quite distorted. It's full of lies, but it seems so real. And you feel powerless to handle the situation. That goes with it because you couldn't handle it then, and that's the way you feel now. And so what you do when you're triggered today is go, oh, that just made me feel like a 5-year-old, but I'm not a 5-year-old. I have tools today. Those are lies that I believed back then. I know this is the truth. And you respond differently, even though part of you is jumping with fear. So what are some of these fears? And we have done a series on complex trauma and fear, and that people from complex trauma who've lived in fear, been controlled by fear, develop hundreds of fears. And so courage for them is going to be tested hundreds of times as each of these different fears is triggered. So let me quickly give you a summary list. Fear of failing, fear of looking stupid, fear of being shamed, fear of getting hurt, fear of change, because if change happens, you're in the unknown, and that means something might happen that you're not prepared for, and you might get hurt, you might get rejected. And so change and the unknown are huge fears. Fear of conflict, because conflict has never led to anything good. Somebody always gets hurt. Fear of confronting angry people, because angry people always hurt people. Fear of talking in public, because you might look stupid, others might reject you. Fear of rejection in relationships, so keep wearing masks, keep not being authentic, not being vulnerable. Fear of being exposed as a fraud, fear of being judged, fear of being disrespected, fear of having someone not like you, so say yes to everybody, never set boundaries. Fear of having your family turn against you and losing them as a support. Fear of being alone. Fear of getting your hopes up only to have them dashed. Fear of entering healthy connection and healthy intimacy, because then people see the real you and they might reject you. Fear of being authentic, and the list goes on and on. So this is a big subject. That's what I want you to see. People coming out of complex trauma have tons of fears. And so recovery is going to trigger all of those fears, and to not give in to them, to make the right choices and keep growing requires courage. So let me itemize something else. When is courage going to be needed? Well, let's say you're an introvert and you realize that in order for you to heal, you got to connect with people. But you're afraid to connect with people because you're so shy because of your introversion. You went to freeze and trying to be invisible. So now if you're going to heal in recovery, you have to force yourself to get out there, put yourself out there to connect, to initiate conversations with people. That's scary. That requires courage. You were always made to feel like a burden, like a pain. Every time you expressed a need, parents made you feel like you were a burden. And so now in recovery, you're going to need to ask for help at times. You're going to need to reach out to others and ask for help. That is scary, but you have to do it if you're going to make it. And then you can't make it in recovery without setting healthy boundaries. And healthy boundaries means saying no to certain people, not allowing certain people in their life, pushing some people back and say, I can't have this closer relationship with you. That could get them angry. That could make them not like you. That could get them to start spreading bad stories about you. That is scary. But you can't make it in recovery unless you do those things. And then you got to try all these new tools, new behaviors. You got to start a routine. You got to respond differently to certain people. You got to get not drawn into drama. You got to get not drawn into gossip. You got to not lash out when your feelings are hurt. You got to learn to regulate your emotions. You got to begin sharing your story authentically. You got to start giving of yourself to help others eventually and volunteering. You got to try learning new skills and new hobbies and using your talents as you begin to learn what they are. Scary, 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 scary. Courage required, courage required. And then some of you, there's going to be a call for an authenticity to the very core of you that at some point with a safe person, you're going to have to share some of your deepest secrets that have kept you sick. And that is going to be super scary. And then you got to deal with the mess from your past that keeps showing up today. So maybe you haven't done your income tax for years. Maybe you haven't taken care of your health for years. Maybe you got legal issues that you've never dealt with. Maybe you got foster care issues with your children that you need to get dealt with. Those are going to be really scary. That could be court. That could be dealing with people in powerful authority positions, the government, etc. Courage required. But there's another one here that I want you to think about. So it's an illustration. This is about your family and peer pressure. So if you see, this is the C chord on a piano. I wish I could just play it for you. It's a beautiful sounding chord. So put dad as the C. So he makes a certain sound. So then you have mom as the E, and then you, the kids, as the G. And so the goal in a complex trauma family is that mom and the kids, they will conform to find the right note that harmonizes with dad. That's how you keep peace. You conform to become what dad wants to create harmony in the home. Okay. You've learned how to do that well. You learned to fawn, you learned to be a chameleon, to wear masks, to adopt roles, all of those things. Now you get into recovery and you realize that the lead person in a group or an organization is a C note, but it's not a healthy person. And your temptation is to go back and be the G note again, to conform, to be what they want, to harmonize with them. But you go, no. If I do that, that's going to make me unhealthy. That's going to prevent me from growing. I will not set up a chord relationship with them to harmonize with them because they are unhealthy. So you are your true note, and it creates a discordant sound. And what do people do? They don't go, oh yeah, that C note, that person's unhealthy. Yeah, they're the problem. They go, hey, you're the problem. You need to get into be that G note again. Then everything will be happy again. And they put pressure on you to conform to the way things have always been so that there's harmony again. But hopefully you have the courage to be able to say, no, that's unhealthy. I am going to be healthy. And if it creates discordant notes with people, then I do not want a relationship with those people. I will keep going till I find a healthy C note and then create a healthy chord that's got true harmony. That takes a lot of courage because you're going to get family, you're going to get friends that are all going to come and say, you're the problem. And the solution is you need to go back to the old G note and conform to the unhealthy C note. This journey requires tremendous courage. Let me just say all of this another way. Courage helps break the old patterns. So your old patterns are based on fear and then avoidance. And you got all kinds of different ways that works itself out. Courage now breaks those patterns. Courage then enables you to say, hey, I have agency to change my life. I don't have to go back to those old patterns. I can do things differently. And that then builds agency and resilience. Courage enables you to start seeing things accurately, to start saying, whoa, I need to deconstruct my entire life to see what is healthy, what is not, where I was lied to, when I was told the truth. I need to separate what is healthy from what is unhealthy. That takes courage because you're going to have a lot of people that don't like you doing that think that you're betraying the family, that you are being a bad person. That takes a ton of courage. Then for you to begin asking for help and seeking connection, the key pieces in recovery, tons of courage is necessary. And so courage then goes, I got to deal with some painful trauma. And courage enables you to do that. Courage enables true healing and growth to happen. But here's what I want you to understand. Do you realize that, and I say this all the time to clients, every step of growth in recovery, especially in the early days, will trigger fear. So you go, I'm going to set boundaries now with this old friend. That triggers fear. I am going to start going to bed earlier and getting up earlier and going in this new routine. That could trigger fear because you're doing stuff differently. I'm going to say no to spending so much time on social media, and I'm going to start just journaling and spending time with me. That could trigger fear. I am going to stop letting people disrespect me. That could trigger fear. Every step of the journey triggers fear. Every new skill triggers fear. Every bit of growth triggers fear. Fear becomes a constant companion in the early days of recovery. Therefore, courage must be a constant companion. So somebody has put it into categories. You need emotional courage because you're going to face painful emotions and memories. You need relational courage because you have to trust again, be authentic, connect, set boundaries. You need spiritual courage because you need to find hope again and meaning after loss. And then you need everyday courage to get out of bed, to show up for yourself, to put all the tools into practice. So what are the tools? Again, I want to give you very general tools and some practical tools. So number one, confront the problem. So when you feel fear being triggered, go, okay, what's going on here? I must feel a lack of resources. What do I feel the lack of resources is? Isolate, okay, this is the problem that's causing the fear. This is the situation. And then as you look at that, kind of dissect it and go, okay, here's my options. I need tools to handle this. I need help from somebody to handle this. But you can only do that if you're willing to confront the problem. And then instead of beating yourself up for being afraid, you're compassionate and curious to go, okay, what's going on here? Let me understand this. What then are my next steps to deal with this? Start to break it down. Some people find it helpful to go even a step farther, and that would be, what is causing this fear to be triggered? Yes, it's a problem today, but does it relate to something that happened in my childhood? Because this fear is feeling quite powerful, even more powerful than the situation today warrants. So maybe it's triggering something that hasn't healed from my past. So I need to go back and not just be curious about the present, but I need to be curious about, did something happen in my past to create this as a mega fear, to create this as an amplified situation, a wound that can get easily triggered, and begin to be willing to explore. And you may need to do that with a professional who can really help you do that. Understand that to deal with fear, it's not just about learning tools to handle problems. It's about gaining a support network. You can't do all of this alone. You need a couple people that can walk beside you and help you. Then the next piece that is part of all of this is addressing the lies that develop because of fear in the early days. Address the lies that get triggered today and that you switch into thinking and believing without any evidence, but it's just based on all of that limbic brain reasoning. And so begin to stop when fear is happening and go, what am I believing right now? And what you usually find is, well, I'm actually believing this and this. And is that true? Well, it was true in my past when I was with unsafe people all the time, but it's not necessarily true today. Okay, what is the truth? And you begin to break down the lies and replace them with the truth. I think for many people, the hardest part of dealing with fear today is that when it's triggered, they escalate so quickly and so intensely. They go from 0 to 100, wanting to fight, flight, or freeze, wanting to lash out, wanting to go to old behaviors. The pull is powerful, it is quick, it is intense. To resist that. So they go to their limbic brain that gets fueled by cortisol, turbocharged. The train wants to leave the station with all the old strategies and patterns, and you're trying to stop that before it happens and go, whoa, let's get regulated. Let's get back to the cortex. We need to get grounded here. And those tools to do that, those are special tools. You can learn them. It's going to take some time. Be patient with yourself. But those are key tools to learn as to how to get regulated again when I'm dysregulated. How to get back to my cortex when I switch to my limbic brain. And then mindfulness to me is so important. So there's elements to this. Number one, mindfulness is doing an inventory. Where's my stress at? Where's my fear at? On an ongoing basis. So I have an understanding of if fear is building, whether it's at 2 or at 8, and what that does as far as making me vulnerable to being triggered. So you need that ongoing mindfulness and awareness. But then I need to learn that when fear is here, that it's okay to sit in it. I can resolve some of it. I can fix some of it, but I might be able to sit in some of it. It's not going to kill me. It's going to make me uncomfortable. Yes, but that's all right. I can deal with that. And so I can breathe through it. I can develop tools to sit in the fear without it driving me to irrational, unhealthy approaches. One of the things that I think is really helpful for people in recovery is to realize how powerful the fear of getting hurt is. And so deep inside, subconsciously even, is I do not want to get hurt. I cannot get hurt. And so every time they go to use a new tool, it puts them into the unknown. It requires change, which puts them in the unknown. And that brings, I might get hurt because I don't know what to expect. Yes, you will get hurt. Being hurt to a child in complex trauma was the end of the world because there was no way of resolving it. Being hurt today with safe people is not the end of the world. It can lead to wonderful growth. It can lead to greater insights into yourself. And so do not let the fear of being hurt be the only controlling thing. Now, let me add this. If you are being hurt by unsafe people, you need to get out of there. I'm not talking about that kind of hurt. Because with hurt with unsafe people, you're back to hurts that you can't resolve because they're not willing to change. I am talking about being with safe people who are supportive and truly love you. Yes, you will get hurt as you grow with them, but it can be resolved. Now let me go into some more practical stuff. So as you go into recovery, you begin to go, I need to deal with my shame. I need to set boundaries. And you got all these wonderful, big steps that you need to take. Break them down into smaller steps. So you go, I need to deal with losses, or I need to set boundaries. Okay, let's take 2 little wee things to get me started in dealing with losses. It's not going to get me through all my losses, but at least get me started in manageable little steps. Okay, I need to set boundaries. What are the 2 little things that I can do? And so you break a great big step that can seem overwhelming and too much down into doable baby steps that get me started on the road. So what's the next thing that I can do to move me towards the goal of grieving this loss, of setting a boundary with this person? Part of dealing with fear is learning to focus on what you can control and realizing what you can't control. And so when you begin to realize, okay, here's a situation, a problem. Here's what I can control. Okay, I can do that. Here's what I can't control. Okay, I got to sit in a little bit of unresolved fear here, but concentrate on the actionable steps. Now, some people have found it's helpful for them to reframe courage and kind of the fear that they're sitting in the terms of, wow, this is actually kind of excitement. I am making changes. So my heart is racing, the adrenaline is pumping. That's because I'm doing positive things. And so instead of just putting courage and fear in a negative, I'm dealing with all this negative stuff, blah, 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 just reframe it as I am taking action. This is exciting. That helps some people. Others find it very helpful when they're in that fear place and they're trying to go to courage to remind themselves of why. So don't just get hung up on the emotion. Go, I am doing this because if I don't set boundaries, I will not get healthy. I will remain in this relationship that keeps me sick. I am dealing with grief because if I don't deal with this grief. So you keep going back to the why, and that gives you extra motivation. Another very practical thing is fear is all about not feeling safe. Courage is I'm going to walk through the fear to get to safety. What many people find helpful is when I'm walking into the fear with courage, I need to create safety for myself in it. So I may be going to set boundaries with a person that could get angry. So before I set that boundary, I need to be able to kind of be safe in my own body, to be able to visualize being safe. I need to get to a safe place afterwards. So I'm working towards total safety, but I need to create safety for myself in the process. That is very important. Another thing is that people find it helpful often when they're building courage in the face of fear is to give themselves affirmation. So they stop and they go, right now I'm in a safe place and I am safe to feel my emotions. And they affirm it's okay to do that right now. I am making changes and it is safe for me to make these changes because I'm with safe people. So you're reminding yourself of truth that you are now living out. Others find it helpful to journal and have journal prompts. So they have every morning, what small brave step can I take today? And that just prompts them to think short term, to think courage, bravery. And then the final one is to celebrate the wins that you have. So you had fear triggered, you got the courage, you walked into the fear, did the right thing, and you came out the other side, and now celebrate it. And that just, again, confirms and helps that grow more and more in your life. So I never want to minimize how hard recovery is, how much fear it triggers, because it does. Like I say, fear is a constant companion in recovery. What I hope you realize is that courage is essential. There's practical ways to build it. There are things that I need to do in order to act on courage in the midst of fear. And I hope that this helps you do it. So that's the end of another Friday night. Again, hope this was helpful. If you liked it, share it with others, make a comment. Thank you for being here.